Hey everyone, welcome to the session on mindfulness. As a pet sitter, especially, I understand the importance of breaking our stress patterns, leaving exhaustion behind, and really renewing your sense of presence. So let's get into it. I want to tell you a little about myself, and as a fellow pet sitter and veterinary assistant, I rest assured I have shared your struggles. I am also an entrepreneur, but I've studied mindfulness for years, as well as mindfulness-based stress reduction. I am a certified yoga instructor and personal life coach. So a lot of these tools I like to blend together for the systems that I use for myself, as well as the people that I work with. So the thousands of people who I've worked with over the years have gotten results from systems just like this, from using mindfulness in their day-to-day life. I'm also a mama. So, of course, shout out to all of our fur parents. I was a fur parent first as a young child, and then I became a bonus mom years ago before I had my first pregnancy and delivered my son in the height of COVID 2020, April 2020 to be exact. So you can imagine the the whirlwind that brought about. But through all of this, we were able to found a company focused on solutions for well-being because my partner and I recognized that we weren't alone in these types of experiences or these struggles. We recognized that we became the majority, that many people across industries are experiencing these challenges and being stuck when it comes to visiting adversity. So through mindfulness, you are going to unlock a door that was maybe previously not available to you. Okay, so if you've ever felt like this, when you get to your work, your first pet home, when you come home after visiting your pets. I remember walking in my door. It was 8 o'clock at night. I had just gotten off of a flight and I walked in. I had expectations for the night, which we'll talk about. And this was not one of them. There was blood all over the living room. I had two dogs at the time, and they had gotten in a fight. So, of course, I spent the next 5 hours at the ER with my dogs. So I know what it can feel like, but mindfulness is going to help you transcend this type of feeling. And how we get there is through the definition. Okay, the definition of mindfulness is also the practice of it. It is paying attention in a systematic way, without judgment, to the present moment. If you've heard of mindfulness, but you haven't, you maybe felt like it was intimidating to practice, or you've asked 10 different people and you've gotten 10 different answers, this is the most succinct definition by, we'll say, the father of mindfulness as it relates to the West. And this is the practice of it, right? So mindfulness in and of itself is a system that you can tap into day after day, moment after moment. We have thousands of opportunities in a day's time that make up our day, that make up our month, that make up our life, that make up our relationship, right? The relationship that we have with our clients, the relationship that we have with our family, the relationship that we have with ourselves. So it's really focusing on these individual moments. And meditation is focusing your mind for a period of time. Now, oftentimes these terms can go hand in hand, but they are not, a lot of people will use them interchangeably, but they're not necessarily the same thing. However, there is a type of mindful meditation. And so if you use these terms interchangeably, that might be why, because there are some similarities, because they both have this energy, this state of being of awareness. Okay. So when you start to practice mindfulness, it helps you become the witness, the observer of your state, of your circumstances, of your internal environment or experience, of your reality. So you begin to sort of de-entangle yourself from what's happening. If you are over identifying with your job, if you are over identifying with maybe an illness or a diagnosis rather than having a condition, as someone who in my early 20s, I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression and insomnia and a number of other ailments, I recognized that at a certain point, those things were not me. And I refused to lead my life in a way that was defined by those things. And when I made that decision, it was through this work here that I'm sharing with you, I was able to let go of the medications, let go of the modalities that I was using and the therapies because I had replaced them with better mechanisms that got me better results. And most importantly, I didn't, that wasn't my identity. And so I recognized there was a way to detach. And that's what mindfulness can do for you is not only is it a practice to practice non-attachment, but that's also the result you get when you practice mindfulness. You become less attached to outcomes, to decisions that are not your own. So when we're caring for animals that live in conditions which we ourselves would not have our animals living in, we sort of detach from the emotional turbulence that is felt when that decision is not ours to own, right? We can detach from not just the outcome, but the need to control it along the way. And so this feeling of always being on the go, of always being sort of invested in everyone but yourself, mindfulness brings you not just to the present moment, but it brings you to your present you. And it gives you the opportunity to redefine who you are because you are rising above. You are, as I said, becoming the witness or the observer. And so you are no longer your thoughts. You're allowed to have an anxious thought. You're allowed to have busy thoughts. You're allowed to have any sort of thought. And that's something a lot of people, when they think about meditation, it'll keep them from starting because they say to me, Renee, I can't quiet my mind. Mindfulness doesn't ask you to, right? We recognize that thoughts are much like a sailboat. Okay, so they're going to come into your stream of consciousness. And our job when we're practicing mindfulness is to allow them to pass, to recognize that everything is temporary, including our thoughts, including realities, including low income months, including all of the things that we encounter, right? Everything is temporary. It's when we don't allow that thought or that circumstance to pass that we say, hey, I'm going to grab onto you and I'm going to go down the rabbit hole with you, right? Or I'm going to over identify and say, I am my thought. I am busy, right? And then it reaffirms that belief system and it reaffirms your speech. When you see an old friend and they say, hey, how are you? You say, oh, I'm so busy. You know, maybe that's true. Maybe it's not totally true, but it's what we let ourselves to believe. Maybe it's, I'm overwhelmed. I'm exhausted. Whatever the thing is, versus saying to ourselves and sort of affirming it to the world and anyone who will listen to us, our family and those that we care about, that there's a time to be on. There's a time to be productive and there is a time to rest. And that we are able to engage in those things but also very thoughtfully disengage. Disengage when we need to, so that we can let go of the things that aren't right here in the now and show up more as our best selves. Okay, so mindfulness and meditation create this space between stimulus and response where we get the opportunity to choose, how would my best self show up in this circumstance? And it can be during challenging times, or it can simply be a Tuesday, right? A Tuesday morning. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, don't worry, I'm going to show you some tactics of how to actually utilize these things in your day-to-day life. But it could just be a Tuesday morning, right? It doesn't have to be anything big or life-changing where you feel the need to deploy mindfulness. We want to be using this in every instance, okay? And this is another one. This is often the go-to for many people as a default response. As people who love animals, we often feel deeply. Many of you might actually be empaths in nature, where you're feeling life even more deeply than those around you. And so we lose a lot of the true experiences that we want to experience. We have higher levels of worry, higher levels of exhaustion or errors, and you end up having to do more work because of those errors and because you were rushing around and you weren't focusing. So when you apply mindfulness, you actually get, this is what the data suggests, the scientific data suggests when it comes to minimal application of mindfulness. You actually have an increase of your quality when it comes to engagements with people or pets for that matter. We have a boost in the chemicals that we want more of, like oxytocin and serotonin and dopamine, rather than things like adrenaline and cortisol. Those are the stress hormones. Those are the fight or flight hormones, right? We get the happy chemicals. We get the bonding chemicals when we are with those people that we love, when we are with ourselves in a very present way. You have an increased availability for not just compassion to others, but for yourself. And as caregivers, as natural caregivers in this line of work, it is conditioned in us very early on to deliver all of the compassion we have to others, all of the empathy, all of the emotional bandwidth that we have to others. And so with mindfulness, you get a chance to not just pause, but you get to rein it in and practice it for yourself, which actually fills your cup. So you have a heightened availability of that compassion. So if you've been in this field for a while and you're feeling a bit bitter or sort of fatigued on your ability to be compassionate rather, to your pets or to pet owners, oh, they should have known that. If you feel sort of bitter, like can you believe this person, that they would call me about this thing? That's what compassion fatigue looks like in animal caregivers. We forget that they don't have the same level of experience or knowledge that we've had over, say, 20-year careers, such as myself, or even 2 or 3 years. When you're taking care of animals day to day that aren't your own, you get experience that pet owners just don't. And so you have a heightened availability as well as the skill of regulation. So your EQ, your emotional intelligence, is growing through the practice of mindfulness. So you're able to regulate your emotions. You're able to regulate that sense of overwhelm better than someone who doesn't practice mindfulness. So when you're looking at pet sitters thinking, well, how are they succeeding? And what makes them different than you or I? perhaps it's this thing. Perhaps they're dialed into this in a different way. So your first practice as it relates to mindfulness is to focus on the breath. This is how you harness this anchor that's always with you. You simply bring your awareness to it. So if you're watching this right now, I want you to think about your awareness like your vision. You have a peripheral vision of things that are outside of me or this slideshow that is in your vision, but you sort of are ignoring it. Your brain is determining that it's not relevant right now. It's not crucial. It's not important. It's there, sort of in the background. And that's what mindfulness, this practice we're doing, is we're honing our awareness. So you're bringing your awareness more often to your breath, something that is automatically happening involuntarily. It's just happening. And so you are tapping into that sensation. What does it feel like? Where do I feel it? Do I feel it at the tip of my nose or leaving my lips? Do I feel a rise and fall in my chest? Or am I able to breathe into my belly by releasing my diaphragm? If you find yourself anxious or overwhelmed and you can't catch that deep breath, it's because your diaphragm's not releasing. So you're taking these shallow, fast breaths, like a Labrador who's happy to see you, right? And we don't want to be doing that all of the time. We want to be taking the slow, deep breaths, like a calm mastiff, right? So you train your awareness by bringing your attention to the breath. And when you do that, and naturally, as it will, as it's designed to do, your mind will wander. Rather than scolding yourself or getting down on yourself or shaming yourself for thinking a thought, redirect your attention gradually, gently, back to the breath. That's the practice. It seems really simple. And the more that you practice it, it will become simple. But the trick is remembering to do it. And what will happen is sometimes when you first begin your practice, it'll either be really deliberate, where you're taking, say, the start of your day, 1 minute, 10 minutes, 30 seconds, right? Just the start of your day, while you're out walking a pet, whatever the thing is, you're taking that moment really deliberately. Or you might start to remind yourself in reflection, did I practice mindfulness today? And how many times did I practice it? So you're really deliberate, but it's sort of in this reflection. Or you lost the moment. Oh gosh, I could have handled that better. You hung up the phone and you said, I could have handled that better. That's your mind's eye saying that was a missed opportunity. So but you're getting there, right? You caught yourself, and eventually you'll move up in front of these moments or in part of these moments where you're in the now and you practice it there in the now. Now, if you are feeling particularly on the go, frazzled or overwhelmed, this is one of my favorite experiences, the stop technique, okay? So this is where you can do it in your mind or you can do it physically, to where if you've ever had those days where you might have woken up, bumped your toe, forgotten your keys, forgotten your wallet, got a flat tire, and things start to cascade, sort of this downward tailspin, this is a technique that you want to employ. Stop what you're doing. If you want to set things down and sit down, that is particularly helpful in my opinion. But you can also just do it, holding it in your mind. What is the experience? Where are you at? Can we apply non-judgment here, right? Just labeling. What are those thoughts? Are you feeling overwhelmed? I am overly busy this weekend. I am overextended. I have overextended myself. Whatever terminology you want to use, just sort of get it out. Clear your mind of it. Take a breath. And when you do that, bring your awareness to the breath and open up. Shift into, lean into a sense of neutrality, a sense of that non-judgment where we aren't labeling our current state or good as good or bad. As I said, there is a time to be productive. There is a time to be busy. There is a time to be tired. There is a time for being sort of that low, the dip of the roller coaster, of the human experience, right? It's the full range of the human experience that in our Western society has somewhat, made it feel like we're not allowed to feel the full range of our human experience, that there's something wrong with us if we are feeling that, right? So we get to just direct our attention to an open curiosity, an open heart, an open mind, and then we proceed forward without expectation. Think about that night that I mentioned when I came home from the airport. Had I not had expectations to come home and go to bed, I wouldn't have been so distraught, right? If I was just more neutral. Okay, that's fine. We're going to the ER, right? Versus, oh man, I'm going to the ER and now I'm annoyed, things of that nature. So just proceeding forward with less or without any expectation. And maybe that's the outward focus, or maybe it's here, right? Maybe you are expecting too much of yourself. Oftentimes, our internal turbulence, so that the battle that we have with ourselves, are because we've self-imposed expectations that are exceedingly high. Those around us do not expect that of us sometimes, yet we expect it of ourselves. And so it might just be letting go of some of that, okay? The third practice is noticing when you're caught up in those thoughts. Maybe it's when you're trying to sleep at night. Maybe it's when you're moving throughout the day and you find yourself making errors or making sort of adding time to your day because of mistakes that you've made. Notice simply that you're caught up in those thoughts, and then choose to come back to the present, right? If you're thinking about, I am notorious for trying to plan out upwards of a year in advance, yet the universe repeatedly, right, relentlessly reminds me that that is not possible. And so I have to surrender and surrender some more when I am getting ahead of myself. You come back into the present and then you lean into that shift, right? Lean into not being caught up in the future, in the past, in some of the thoughts that do not serve you, recognizing that they're not serving you, that simply they're just the neural pathways that have been there, and so they're familiar, and so they're the first thoughts that you do think, yet they're not serving you, okay? So when it starts to get into practice, your day-to-day, it's going to look different. You are going to have you're going to have less shame or feelings of guilt when it comes to being your best self, when it comes to exercising boundaries, of being able to say not just no to maybe an additional client, but saying yes to yourself, or saying yes to your kid or your family commitment. Reminding yourself what you're saying no to when you say yes to that other thing, right? So, and being able to exercise those boundaries without feeling, again, overly committed to them or guilty for identifying them even, right? When you start to apply mindfulness, you offload these things that have been bogging you down, so your bandwidth is freed up. So you have an increased ability to solve problems, create innovative solutions, look at that bigger strategy picture for your business or for your life, right? If you've been in the weeds, as Brene Brown says, or if you've been too close to see the tree in the forest, right? You've just been so busy going day to day to day. You've been working in your business versus on your business. You might not feel like you can even see what the future holds. And so you have an increased clarity to shift your vision, to create a new updated vision of what it is that you're trying to create and cultivate. You're able to better allocate your limited resources, your time, your energy, your awareness, right? Your attention. Attention and time are among the hottest commodities in 2024. And so that's why I'm so grateful to you for being in this session, because your attention could be anywhere else, right? Social media, your phone is constantly giving you notifications if you have them turned on. My phone is on Do Not Disturb. I have no notifications. This is part of my mindfulness practice. If you guys want to employ that as a logistic, you go for it. But it also helps you to align what is truly important to you. If you haven't identified what your core values are, you might not be living in accordance to them. And so you aren't in congruence. You're misaligned, if you will. But when you practice mindfulness, you're able to create alignment through leading and living your core values by identifying what's important to you and ensuring that you're on track with that. And that becomes the measuring stick so that you can self-check. Am I doing what's important to me? Am I living in accordance with that? And if I'm not, how do I get back there? How do I get back there? How do I get back there quicker next time? How do I get back there quicker next time? Because the universe is going to pull you away. Lots of other people want those resources from you. It's our job to protect them, to protect our character. You become the superhero. You become the superhero of your own life. You practice what you are learning. You become the student as well as the teacher, because through osmosis, people will naturally say, they'll feel this shift in you, and people will be able to absorb that from you a little bit, right? Even my guy at times has said to me, I don't think I would be able to show up for you in the same way, prior to me meeting you. It sounds funny, but we've changed each other for the better. And this is one of those ways. He doesn't practice like I do deliberately. It's just something that he sort of gets through osmosis. And so we have to remind ourselves, though, that it is a choice. We have a choice moment to moment to practice this, to be our best selves, and to lead, to live, to love in the way that is most meaningful to us. I hope this presentation has served you. This is a crash course in a topic that you can study for years. It's a lifelong practice, but I trust that it is enough to get you going. It is enough to not just inspire you, but to equip you and to move you in the right direction. So I hope that I get to hear some of the results that you get once you start applying this to your life, to your individuality, and to your business. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.